Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Anna. I'm a clinical psychology doctorate student and I make videos about real life applications to psychology. So go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you want to see more of that. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to support someone who's going through an eating disorder. This could be anyone that you care about, a friend, a family member, and I think that it's a really important topic because the way we react to people going through eating disorders can make the situation worse rather than better. So it's really important to know what the ways are to react to someone with an eating disorder that's not going to put them in a worse position than they started. So I'm going to split this video in two sections, what not to do and what to do. So let's start with what not to do. One thing that I know is really difficult but is really important is to not force your loved one to eat. And I know this can be really painful because, you're watching and your loved one is disintegrating before your eyes and you can feel really panicked and start to feel really exasperated and want them to gain weight because you want them to stick around. But the thing is, this is only going to make matters worse. Specifically, if you emotionally blackmail someone into eating or you're guilting them into eating, people with eating disorders already have so much guilt related to eating that adding more to the situation is only going to make matters worse. So an example of this is saying, I am not going to finish my lunch unless you do too. This would be considered emotional blackmail, essentially. And this will ensure that your loved one feels extreme guilt because clearly they don't feel comfortable doing what you're asking them to, and they're going to feel horrible afterwards. And maybe they might even hate you for it. And it's not uncommon for people with eating disorders to start to grow really resentful over people who are forcing them to eat, and even over nutritionists and therapists who are trying to get their life back on track. It's really not uncommon for them to start to resent those people for forcing them to eat. And this is why when a mental health professional or a nutritionist or a dietitian is too focused on food intake and a specific goal weight or a specific calorie number, this can be really detrimental to that person's well-being in the long run. And it can really damage the therapeutic alliance. So if a trained therapist can still face negative consequences when doing this, you as an untrained loved one trying to support your loved one can do so much damage by forcing that person to eat. Another thing not to do is to impose a certain weight. And just generally, don't make recovery seem like something so number-oriented, because people with eating disorders, their lives are already completely number-oriented. They live every single day based on how many meals, how many snacks, how many calories in a pound, how many pounds am I going to lose, how many weeks am I going to lose these pounds in. And so focusing too much on numbers, whether it be calories or weight, is going to, again, make matters worse. Recovery is something that starts inside. It's something that starts with the way you see yourself, with the cognitions you have, with the feelings that you have. It doesn't start with having a concrete number on the scale. Another thing that you should never do is to comment on their weight or just their body or their physical appearance in general. And some of these you might be thinking, well, what if I say something nice about how they look? What if I say, you look really good or you look really healthy? Don't do it, because here's the thing. Obviously, if you comment saying someone is big or overweight, that's going to be extremely damaging to someone who has an eating disorder. If you say that they're skinny or that they're too skinny or that they've lost weight, if you comment even in a complimentary way on that, that's going to motivate them to do more weight loss. That is positive reinforcement for them, so you never want to say that. But you also don't want to say things that are neutral or positive related to how they look. Like, yeah, you look really healthy, or I think you look really good for the first time in a long time. Because they're going to find a way to negatively interpret that as well. You might be thinking, oh, they're going to love that I said that they look good or that they look healthy. No. What they might be thinking is, this person used to always tell me that I was super skinny, and now they're saying that I look good and that I look healthy. So what that means is that I look like I've gained weight and that I'm clearly doing something wrong and I need to work harder at losing weight. That is what someone with a disordered mind is going to be thinking. So no matter what you say, don't say anything about their physical appearance. No matter how kind your intentions, it can be misinterpreted for someone who has a disordered way of thinking. Another thing that you don't want to do is to make that person feel irrational or crazy for the way they see things. You might be thinking, they're clearly so skinny, they don't look good, they look emaciated, they're clearly unhealthy, and they're still trying to lose weight. This is just, it's crazy. But don't say that to them because it's so invalidating, and it just shows that you don't understand where they're coming from. You don't see eye to eye, and they're just gonna think, this person's not there for me because they don't understand what I'm going through. And especially when someone is going through something so severe, to make them feel crazy on top of it is just so detrimental. Another thing you don't want to ever do is to make comparisons with people. So if you see someone walking down the street, you also don't want to comment on their physical appearance either, especially not if you're comparing someone else to your loved one who has an eating disorder. So an example of what you never want to say. For example, saying, yeah, I mean, you look really unhealthy, but Susan's disorder is even worse. Like, Susan has a serious eating disorder, I can tell. Of course, it should be obvious why saying something like that would be wrong, because as we know, people tend to get competitive about weight loss, especially when they have an eating disorder. So any kind of comparison is just going to motivate them to get worse, essentially. And even doing it the opposite way, even saying, what, you think that girl is the same weight as you? That girl is obviously so much heavier than you. That's also going to be motivating. So as a rule, don't comment on their weight, and also don't comment on other people's appearances. And especially, don't compare the two. The last thing that you don't want to do is to project your own fear and your own anxiety onto your loved one. Obviously, eating disorders affect the whole family, they affect everyone around them as well, because people are worried for them. People are scared of losing that person. But you don't want to be projecting that in a way that is fear-mongering or in a way that's interfering with that person's healing. You don't want to say things to them like, I'm afraid you're gonna die. That's the kind of thing that you should be bringing up with your own therapist. So let's move on to what you should do. Because it's fine and dandy to know what you shouldn't do, but you should also know how you can actually help. The first thing is to be aware of the symptoms, and there are countless symptoms, and this of course depends on the type of eating disorder as well. Obviously, weight loss can be a symptom. Going to the restroom after a lot of meals, toying with food instead of eating it, so things like pushing around food with a fork, claiming that your loved one is full after every meal and refusing to finish meals, refusing snacks, refusing to admit hunger is a big one. A big source of pride for people with eating disorders is not being willing to admit that they're hungry because they think it makes them stronger. Measuring limb circumference, such as, like measuring arms, wrists, thighs, really any limb can work for this. Negative self-talk about their weight or their body. So if they start to say really negative things about how they look, that could be a warning sign. Spending a lot of time on diet culture, forms of media, or even pro-ana websites. This could be, as severe as actually going on these pro-anorexia websites, or it could be just having a ton of really emaciated models on their Instagram feed. Avoiding going to events where eating is to be expected, such as, going out to dinner with friends. Exercising excessively. This can even result in some bruises, like a lot of people with eating disorders have some bruises on the middle of their spine because of excessive crunches. Fainting, and so many more. If you really want an extensive list, I would recommend doing your own research and trying to connect the dots with what behaviors you see in your loved one. Another thing you want to do after you've informed yourself about the warning signs is to express your support and validation, because eating disorders are highly complex, and it's never just about wanting to lose weight. It's always, they don't feel supported, or they have low self-esteem, or there's something seriously wrong happening emotionally, not just physically. So it's really important for you to express to this person, I care about you, I'm here for you, I'm always open to talking. Another thing you want to do is, without being pushy, start to help them associate food with positive events. Whether it be going to restaurants that they really enjoy, not forcing them to eat at said restaurants, but if they really like seafood, maybe saying, I would really like to go to the seafood place, do you think you could accompany me? Or if they really like Italian food, trying to plan a vacation to Italy. Or, when you're out and about at a fun event, maybe if it's, let's say, a Christmas fair, encouraging them to have some hot chocolate because it's themed, it's thematic. And essentially what you're doing is, without forcing them to eat, you are helping them see that there are benefits to wanting to eat and to letting yourself eat, because in a way you're missing out on these quality moments with people, on these quality memories, when you're completely excluding food from the equation. Another thing you want to do is to emphasize their non-physical appearance related strengths. So this could be saying like, you have such a big heart, or you're so intelligent, you're so good at your job, whatever it might be. Just reminding them that they have strengths that go beyond how they look or what the number is on the scale, and they are so much more than just their weight. Another thing you want to do is emphasize recovery as a healing remediation between them and food. It's not a numerical goal, right? Like we talked about, it is not about a number on the scale. Anyone that is working with eating disorders and says, I really need you to get to this specific number, can be doing something really damaging. So how do you do this? How do you focus on their relationship with food rather than getting them to a specific number? Well, this could be something like, if they're eating something that they consider a prohibited food and they look really uncomfortable, instead of saying, finish it, you should say something like, you look kind of sad. Like, do you want to talk to me? Like, what's going on? Like, what's going through your head right now? You look really uncomfortable and I would just love to be there for you. Or, instead of focusing on the act of eating itself or how much they are eating, focusing on feelings instead. Like, you look kind of distressed, like, talk to me, can you tell me what's going on right now? Something else that you want to do is to model intuitive eating. So this could be as simple as stop eating when you're full, get a snack when you're hungry, admit when you're hungry. These things are all really important in normalizing and modeling healthy relationships with food. And when they see that it's okay for everyone around them to admit that they're hungry and to grab a snack, they might be a little bit more inclined to forgive themselves when they want to do the same thing. Another thing you want to do is to be mindful of your loved one's triggers. So for example, if you know that someone is really triggered by Victoria's Secret models and how skinny they are, back when they actually still had the Victoria's Secret model fashion show, then that might be a good time to check in with someone like that and say, I know November is really hard for you, tell me what's been going on. Again, cannot emphasize enough how happy I am that that fashion show is no longer a thing. And the last thing I recommend that you do is encourage them to seek therapy, but do it in a way that's more conversational and that gets them seeing what the benefit would be to them. Because let's be honest, people are not going to do something that they don't see as being in their best interest. And someone with an eating disorder, they're going to think their best interest is to avoid therapy because it's going to encourage them to gain weight. But help them see that they could benefit from therapy, not just because they need to gain weight, but because they're dealing with a lot of guilt and a lot of really emotional turmoil to do with their food. Let them know that this isn't because you necessarily want them to get to a set goal. This is because you want them to just have someone to talk to have someone to guide them and support them through this process. And another thing you want to do is, if they do agree to go to therapy, which I hope that they do, make sure that they get to a therapist who specializes in eating disorders, because if someone hasn't worked extensively with eating disorders, they can really do more damage than good. It's a very delicate topic for people to deal with. If someone is not trained in working with these disorders, it's not good. It can end up really bad for your loved one. So just some final thoughts. I can understand it's really scary to see your loved one going through this, and I can imagine that it's probably really hard for you as well. So definitely try to seek therapy for yourself if you need. I can understand it's scary to see someone with an eating disorder because it's the mental disorder that I think has the highest mortality rate of all the mental disorders. So it makes sense that you would be scared. And it's completely valid if you are scared, but just try not to project that onto your loved one and try not to do more harm than good by doing the things that I listed you shouldn't be doing. I realize it's a very delicate matter and there has to be a balance between helping them get the help that they need and pushing them towards health, but also not pushing them too hard in a way that makes them retaliate. And at the end of the day, only they can trigger their own recovery. Because the average amount of years it takes to get over an eating disorder is 6 years. So don't expect things to change overnight. Don't expect now that they're in therapy, suddenly within a month they're going to get better. That's not how it works. You need to have a realistic outlook, because getting frustrated with them or pushing them harder is only going to make matters worse. I hope this was helpful. If you have a story or any thoughts to do with this topic, let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.